Hi, and welcome to another edition of Newsmakers Journal of the Variant Year. I'm Jerry Roberts. It is Friday, February 25, and we are joined by our panel of top local journalists. Melinda Burns, freelance investigative reporter, Josh Molina, ace political reporter, and the Joe Rogan of Santa Barbara, and June Starkey, staff writer for The Independent. Thank you all for coming. Let me just start with COVID. Everything seems to be heading in the right direction. We've had less than 100 new cases a day for the last week. Only one new death to report. That's 649 in the county. Hospitalizations are good. The masking indoors is taken off. I think the only thing that's really left is masking for school kids, which is there seem to be rebellions around the state where individual school boards are releasing that. So far so good, but watch out for that that stealth variant that's out there. Josh, I want to start with you and the school board. A new controversy involving an incident at Santa Barbara Junior High, where apparently a kid was set upon by some of his scholarly colleagues and used some very rough language. But this comes to light during public comment at the school board meeting. Tell us, say a word about the incident and then how the district handled it.
Okay, so at Tuesday, Santa Barbara Unified School District board meeting during public comment, a mom testified that her son was the victim of a hate crime at the Santa Barbara Junior High School campus. And she had said that a few classmates, I think she said 4, had basically ganged up on him and called him the N-word. And then one of them put their knee on his neck and referred to George Floyd. Apparently, then he switched with someone else who put a knee on the head and did the same thing. So she articulated this during public comment. They have 90 seconds to talk during the Santa Barbara Unified School District. So she said a lot in a short amount of time. And she basically wanted to know why there had not been a better response, a quicker response from the district. And she was demanding answers for how this could happen and what's going to happen in the future to prevent things like this from happening. There were at least 10, maybe 12 other people from the community who called in who had heard about the incident and also called on the district to do more, to do better, to be more responsive, to communicate. This had happened the prior Wednesday. So this happened on a Wednesday. The school board talks about it, or the members of the public talk about it on Tuesday. And one of the commenters had said that, why does it take so long? Why is this not a line item on the agenda? I think it was Chelsea Lancaster, an activist, who said that. And she said, why shouldn't this be on the agenda? It may have been somebody else, but the point was, why does this have to come out in public comment? And why does the district have to, not tell everybody until after the public makes it an issue?
Yeah, I want to come back to that. June, you actually scored the beat on Josh. I got your story up considerably faster than Josh did. He was poking around, but it may be just age. I don't know. What was your sense of, sort of how the members of the school board heard this? I mean, were they aware of it? Did it come as a surprise? And why didn't the district kind of get out in front of this?
I mean, I can't see how it would have been a surprise to them. At least 7 other people in the administration, including in the main district office, knew that this had happened. So I can't imagine that it would have been that big of a surprise to them. I think that it definitely wasn't handled very well by the people who knew. I think that I agree that there should have been something on the agenda about it. I think that, the principal did the best she could to respond, but yeah, the family was not offered any kind of real resources. beyond mental health counseling, like a plan on how they're going to get him back into school or transfer him somewhere if he needs to transfer, like.
Do
This
we
is
know what happened to the perpetrator, to the kids that did it? Were they?
They wouldn't confirm, the district wouldn't confirm, but I have heard that they were suspended.
Yeah,
I assume for probably about 3 days.
yeah. Josh, and this comes, at a time when the district is making equity, such a high profile issue. The new ethnic studies curriculum and, all of the controversy that's been around that. Why were they so slow off the mark on this? Is this because our old colleague, Cammie Barnwell, is no longer there to get out ahead of stories, or what?
So a couple of things. The district, or I should say the principal of Santa Barbara Junior High, put out a parent square message, I believe the day after the incident, just to Santa Barbara Junior High. Okay, so there was some effort to inform the Santa Barbara Junior High community. There was no district-wide communication. There was no press release. It wasn't until after public comment that the district put out through Parent Square, again, not a press release, but through Parent Square, a very long message full of platitudes, sort of overstating the obvious, and trying to sound like as though they were being sensitive to the issue, which raises the question is, why did it take the public to bring this out in public for them to put out their messaging? And so I think that, I don't know why they didn't do it sooner, other than maybe they thought it wouldn't go public. Maybe
Yeah,
they
well,
thought nobody.
that's what I wonder. June, of course, the previous superintendent, Kerry Matsuoko, was kind of run off a year before his contract was up, in large part because of his just constant fumbling of public communication about incidents. Most famously the thing at
San Marcos.
Yeah, at San Marcos High. What is your own experience in getting information out of the district, and how accessible are you finding Hilda Maldonado, the superintendent, the board members, and what about this new guy who's doing the public information job?
Nick Masuda?
Yes, Nick Masuda.
Yeah, well, most of them speak exclusively through Nick, and that does make it a bit hard to ask real questions or to have an actual conversation with them, because he takes a day to respond, which is normal for a public information officer, but to be able to speak to the superintendent and to the people that we need to speak to can be kind of difficult, and being able to ask a follow-up question is almost impossible, because once you have the answers, it's deadline and I can't ask anything else or I'm behind. So it is a little difficult. I understand maybe in a situation like this, they don't want to talk with me on the phone. They don't want to follow up. They want to keep the information as brief as possible. But I think that backfires on them. I think they seem like removed from the situation because of that.
Yeah.
Can I say something, Jerry, real quickly on this point?
Could I possibly stop you?
Isn't this my show? Come on, Jerry. I'll give you an example. I reached out to Board President Rose Munoz for a comment. I sent her a text message or an email. It was an electronic communication. And she got back to me and I read it and I said, Rose Munoz did not write this. I know Rose Munoz, this was not her. And then I asked Nick Masuda if he helped her, and he said he was in consultation with her. I can tell you that I'm not going to quote anybody from the board or an administrator who is having the PIO write their comments for them. It's not good government. It's not transparent. And if the board president can't get back to me with sort of their own sort of comments, it's I don't know what good it is. And so I think there's a little bit of a layer there. And of course, they would say, well, we have jobs to do and we have a director of communication and that's their job. And this is time tested with journalism and public relations. And I get that. Okay, I get that. But this is Santa Barbara.
It's Santa
And
Barbara,
the
exactly.
best way to communicate is for the people with the knowledge to do the talking to
Just
the
speak
journalists.
to it. Well, I do know, I did notice you got a hold of Fran Wagonek, who was involved in it, and she's always pretty accessible on these
Yeah.
things. But I have to say, you never tire of bashing Hilda Maldonado, and I have a somewhat more positive view of her, but this is terrible. I mean, this is just a blunder about the way they've handled it. So we'll see how it goes going forward. Melinda, you of course are doing the Lord's work, as everyone knows, on Santa Barbara's biggest continuing scandal hiding in plain
Wait,
sight.
wait a minute, Jerry. I'm not doing the Lord's work covering Hilda, but Melinda's doing the Lord's work covering cannabis. Okay.
Hey, Melinda is working for free, Chief. I got news for you. A couple of us here have invented this new business model where you work your butt off and you don't get any pay for it. So that's why she's doing the Lord's work. But Das Williams, Steve Lavanino, and to a lesser extent, Greg Hart cannot stop throwing rose petals in the pathway of the cannabis industry. Whatever they want, they get rubber stamped at the board. And the latest is they're gonna, I guess, on Tuesday, relax the acreage caps, which were, if there was anything in that terrible ordinance that could put a break on it, it was the caps. But now even that is out the window. Can you talk about what they're up to first, and then let's talk about why they get such a free pass, why the industry gets such a free pass.
Well, so on Tuesday, they're going to the acreage caps in terms of acreage in the caps stay the same, but they're adjusting things to effectively expand the industry. So what they're doing is they're removing processing from the cap, and there's a 3 acres, 3 acres up north and 9 acres in the Carpinteria Valley that are freed up if they take processing out of the caps. And so that means that if you have land that you didn't max out in cannabis cultivation on your property, and you want to come in for a processing plant, you're no longer restricted by the acreage in the cap, which is full in the North County. It's not full yet in Carpinteria. And you could come in separately for a permit for a processing building.
And why is it so important to do this?
Well, I think over the last year or so, the growers have been telling the county that in the race to get their cultivation in under the cap, they've ditched their plans, dropped their plans for processing buildings because it's a much more complicated process. The buildings have to be sealed, they have to have odor control, they have to be looked at in terms of setbacks and height and architecture and all of this. So it would take too long, and they were afraid they'd lose their place and not make it into the cap. So they told the county they wanted to have the processing removed from the cap, and the county did survey the growers. The county met with 2 growers associations. They had one meeting.
But they didn't meet with that. They didn't meet with any community groups that
No.
are highly critical of any of this. In other words, again, it's a one-way thing going on. It's just the industry that's being heard there.
Well, that is what some of the citizens groups have said, and it's all happened pretty quickly. They started talking about it in September at meetings where it was not agendized. It was brought up as an idea, and then um, now there was one hearing last week, and then there's another hearing next week, and that's it.
So, and so from the grower's perspective, this as a practical matter is important because they don't have to pay transportation and other costs to have it packaged somewhere else and then brought back.
Right, they're going as far away as Lake County with their product, San Bernardino County, LA, Lompoc, which is of course closer. You're talking hundreds and hundreds of miles in some cases that the plants are being taken somewhere else to be dried, trimmed, cured, packaged. And of course, that represents a pretty big loss of tax revenue for the county. So in addition to the acreage so then now there's a little bit more acreage freed up for cultivation in the north and the south. Down here in Carpinteria, 9 acres, when they only have 186 acre cap is a lot of cultivation in greenhouses.
And
But it also means that you could, even if you don't have any cultivation going on, and you had an agricultural zoning on your property, you could come in for a standalone processing building with no cultivation.
but isn't the smell even worse with the processing plant? I mean, that's been the huge issue that everybody's on about. Setting aside the wine industry's concerns and the avocado growers and others, but particularly in carp.
It is the smelliest stage of the cannabis, growing, and it is the harvest and then the processing are the most noxious odors. But for processing, you have to have filters in your building. You have to have carbon filters inside there. And in Carpinteria, you have to have, best available technology in your greenhouses too.
Now that's worked really well so far, as I understand from.
It's a slow start. It's getting
That's very diplomatic.
4 years later, yes.
That's very, very diplomatic of you. And of course, leading the parade for this new sweetheart deal is none other than the ever smiling Graham Farrar, good buddy of Das Williams, who emails with him about what shows they're going to see at the Santa Barbara Bowl. So he's going to get the first exemption, correct?
No, actually, he's come in for a processing building on his property. He would not be.
Oh, he's not going for the cap, I see.
It could have the effect of freeing up acreage on his property for more cultivation. But he tells me that he's maxed out in his greenhouses. There are no more greenhouses where he could put more grows. So he doesn't have any empty space where he could put more grows. And he has been processing on a different property from where he wants to put this new building. He has 2 locations in Carpinteria. Both of them are hotspots for this skunky smell of pot, and have been for years. And so he's in an old flower packing house on one of the property doing processing.
All right.
That would be closed down. He'd be in this new state-of-the-art building. But
I'm going to make a wild prediction that he gets everything he wants and they take the caps off, and that Greg Hart, Steve Lavanino, and Das Williams, all in the pocket of the industry, vote for this. Now, Melinda, God bless you for doing this. I mean, it's a huge story. We don't have any substantial daily coverage, of course. And, I just think so much of this would be unknown if it weren't for you. So thank you.
well, thanks for having me on, Jerry.
June, let me ask you about a weird story you had. This person who was apparently fairly high ranking in the Associated Student Government out at IV has been planting surveillance or cameras or what in Bath. What talk about? Explain the story. the Ivy
Yes.
Peeper.
So he was the disability advocate, I believe, for the Associated Students, but it was discovered that he was putting hidden cameras and everyday items, like I think there was an air freshener and then a home Alexa kind of system, and then putting them in people's bathrooms. I think he just got out on his $400,000 bail, but yeah, it was a pretty severe case. I think there are several women that have come out against him and are filing harassment claims against him.
How was this discovered?
I'm not sure exactly how it was discovered. I think that someone just noticed that there was something wrong. Usually hidden cameras are pretty obvious once you start looking at it. Like a Febreze doesn't have a little reflective lens on the inside part of it. And, you know, it's once you look and notice it, they reported it, and then they were able to determine from, I think, the footage that he was the one that was planting them.
And this guy had a very popular Twitter account at UCSB that a lot of people, what was it called? My
Mr.
Bitches?
Bitches.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, he had a
So-
pretty popular account. I mean, just following the activity on Twitter about him, I can tell that there are a lot of people who felt maybe safe around him or were friends with him, and they feel very betrayed because it seems like maybe he used that influence to be able to put himself in the situation where he can plant a camera in their house. But yeah, I think he had like a little bit over 1,000 followers, but he was just always talking about, you know, UCSB activities. He, you know, stupid memes that college students love, and he gained a little bit of popularity. I mean, I think also in his position at Associated Students, and then being a fourth year student, he'd been there for a while, so he'd created a sort of group of friends. But yeah, he was fairly well known.
Oh man, what a weird story. All right. Speaking of weird stories, this week we had David Attias, who mowed down and killed people 21 years ago. I guess, was it a Friday night in IV, coming into court and asking to be kind of released from all restrictions that he still has in his life. He was judged insane after his trial. Josh, you covered the original incident. You're old enough to have covered the incident. Remind people what happened.
Well, I think I was like 2 years at the morning paper, the daily paper. And it was about a little bit after 11, and the editor called. They had heard on the scanner something about 4 black tags in Isla Vista, and you know, black tag being the police code for a fatality. And so obviously that's the news story. And so I got a ride out there, and known better than to try to drive in Isla Vista on a Friday night. I got a ride, I got dropped off, and it was a horrific scene. It was just, I got there really fast. The bodies were covered, but there were bodies on Sabado Tarde. David Attias had a breakdown, and he drove through a crowd of pedestrians on Sabado Tarde, and he killed 4 people. Fifth one was badly injured. He died years later. Bert Levy, you know, and I don't know exactly from the complications of that, but he did die a few years later. And so it was, you know, I remember talking to Chancellor Yang and UCSB officials and students and people who had witnessed the whole thing. And it was a tough story. And it was one of these things that was one of the first real big sort of cable news shows, you know, where you had all of these networks parachuting in to Isla Vista and Santa Barbara and doing a story. And I remember having to deal with, hey, we're local media, we want to talk, we care. And that whole backlash that comes from Isla Vista, very protective of their community, saying, you know, we're not talking to you national media because you're just parachuting in. So it was quite the scene. And I stayed out there and went back the next day with Scott Hadley, who is another former great investigative reporter. And we covered the story, and we, you know, remember it, you know, fairly well. But it was a tragedy. It was just horrible all around.
Melinda, you're nearly as old as me, if you can imagine that, and you've been around a long time and seen a lot of stories in Santa Barbara and around. Where would you put the Attias thing? I mean, was that kind of the biggest story ever in the top 10? What's your recollection of that yarn?
Well, for mass shootings, you mean? There've been several.
Yeah, the post office,
There was the post office, and then there was another
the incel
shooting.
guy too.
In Isla Vista.
Yeah. So-
They were terrible. Yeah. And I think, and I was doing a lot of reporting in Isla Vista around 2013. I think it's a different place now. And I think that those two terrible shootings are you know, mass killings, it really kind of shook up the university and the community to the degree where they really they have a kind of autonomous government now there where they didn't have anything before. And so you have a community services district, you have money coming in, more money coming in from the
state.
University. It's not such a free for all there where, 20,000 people under the age of 21.
Right, Halloween and
Yeah.
the thing on the beach. Yeah, that's. So Josh, what was your reaction when you heard that Attias, he's feeling much better now? So the judge should just let him do whatever.
Well, it's a tough one. I don't know all that goes into the psychological evaluation of people who've been through that process of rehabilitation. So I don't want to say anything, insensitive about, maybe he is at a place where he can not have meds and not be monitored. And
Not run over people. Yeah.
I mean, maybe he is, maybe he isn't. I don't know. I guess the experts have to decide that, but just sort of, intuitively as a person, I think that I'd probably feel a lot safer if he were, in a system where he were monitored, because that was a very tragic situation. And, I don't know if that's a risk you want to take. He was found, insane, right? And so he was able to serve, his initial time in a facility that was not a, traditional, prison. So I don't know, but I mean, I think if I'm the family, I definitely do not want him out.
Yeah. All right. Real quick, we gotta wrap up. But June, where are we with the mask for students for schools? Where does that stand?
It's still in place as far as I know. I haven't heard anything from the district about taking that away yet. I would imagine that it would be sometime soon, but again, with this other variant coming back, they might want to just be cautious before they let it go, because getting kids to agree to do that and do it regularly is pretty difficult. So doing the back and forth, oh, no mask, okay, mask again, no mask is, it doesn't really work with young people.
Has there been much public comment about that issue recently at the school board?
Yeah, but from the same people who don't think there should be any COVID restrictions at all. So it's hard to tell what the real consensus is from parents.
All right. And Josh, you have our old friend Scott Hadley coming up on the podcast.
Yeah, I'm really excited. It's a good segue. Scott Hadley, former investigative reporter in Santa Barbara. He and I covered the David Attias tragedy that weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and we wrote about it, and we were going to talk about what we remember about that evening and that weekend and that incident and our reporting. And it's just going to be great to catch up with him because, as you know, he's top-notch journalist.
Yeah, and he's gone over to the dark side in private enterprise with 23andMe in the Bay Area. Melinda, what's next on your reporting agenda?
Well, there's a Lompoc cannabis grow project coming up at the county planning commission on Wednesday. We haven't really looked at Lompoc, but it's an opportunity to write about some ranchers who are concerned about the water use on a property that used to be dry farmed in lima beans and now is going to use quite a bit more, much more water with cannabis, and they're concerned about their wells.
Yeah, well, 1,000-year drought's a good time to bring more cannabis online. Hey, and real quickly, what's the state of play with the Santa Claus Lane county retail outlet? Where does that stand?
I think that that's still working through sort of through the county review. A number of other businesses on Santa Claus Lane are unhappy about that project. There's already a severe parking problem
Right.
there. It is access to a beach. So at some point, depending on what happens to the project, you wonder how it would fare at the Coastal Commission.
Yeah, somebody wrote, concerned about it, wrote to me and said it's going to be like a cannabis Chick-fil-A with the traffic there. Hey, when's that hearing, by the way, John? That Chick-fil-A thing.
So that's probably this Tuesday. Yeah, I think it's coming up this Tuesday. I've not looked at the agenda, but I remember they talked about it coming up the first week of March. I will say I've driven by Newsock's office is near there, and I've driven by Chick-fil-A, and anecdotally, it seems like the problem has gotten a lot better. They have a security guard standing on the sidewalk who actually tells people, you can't queue up here in the street. I don't know what the hearing's going to be about, but it does. They have put a security guard on the sidewalk to help direct traffic.
Oh, okay, that's a first. Yeah, a lot of chatter about that on Nextdoor. Okay, well, thanks very much to everybody. June Starkey, Josh Molina, and Melinda Burns. Thank you for watching, and we will see you next time on Newsmakers.